guest is Patrick Monette. He's a licensed mental health, addiction, and certified trauma counsellor and certified life coach located in Northern New York. He is certified EMDR therapist and EMDRI approved consultant and certified EFT couples therapist. He's also taught at local unis and maintains a private practice focusing on couples work and trauma-informed treatment, as well as gender issues, anger management, perinatal traumas, and co-occurring disorders. He is actively engaged in the local community drug court systems as a mental health consultant and educator. Patrick is fluent in English and Spanish and offers treatment in both languages. He's also started his bi-weekly video show and podcast, Friday Night Feels, that focuses on various aspects of wellness and incorporates guests to come and share their experiences and areas of specialty. Patrick offers online couples courses and retreats internationally called Hold Me Tight to assist couples focus and improve their relationships. I hope you enjoy him as much as I did. It was so wonderful interviewing him. Hi, Patrick. It's so wonderful to see you here.
Hi, Kate. It's so nice to connect. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh, yes, of course. It's and we have had a bit of trouble over the oceans and the land that we come from. So I'm in Australia and you're in
New York.
New York. New York, New York, or
No, Northern New York.
Northern New York? Okay,
Yes, it's a long state.
right. And in Australia, like we've got the same mass, but only a few states compared to you as well. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So today I've asked you to come on because I know you're you specialize in EMDR and couples therapy. Is that
hmm
right? Yep.
Yes. Yep.
What else?
Trauma and also with addiction and compulsive related issues,
Right. Okay.
and the combination that goes with all of those.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, that's right. So, but the reason I've asked you on is because your dad died not that long ago.
Right. To some people it seems like a long time ago, but it just seems very fresh. So it's 3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Cor-
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing, isn't it? That people feel like, you know, it's been a long time. 3.5 years is a long time. My dad died in 1989,
Mhm.
and people say that's a long time. But it's still your dad.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
What was your dad like?
Uh, he was a very quiet person externally, but he had a really good sense of humor. Like what we would say as like a dad sense of humor, like dad humor. He was a teacher, a sixth grade teacher for over 30 years,
Oh, wow.
and he and my mom had both retired, and I come from a large family. I'm the youngest of six kids.
I'm, I'm the eldest of six.
Oh, I love it. See, I think people in large families, I think we find each other because
Yes,
it's a special energy. Like when you grow up in a large family.
yes, that's for sure.
And he was, growing up, you don't really understand things. You don't understand the stress that parents go through. But he and my mom were always really, really hard workers, and it's interesting that, you think you know your parent, and then after they pass away, it's like they have this whole secret life that you never like before you, right? So I've just even the last few years just learning stories from my mom that I didn't know. Like, he was just such a dedicated teacher. He would go go to people's homes and work with the children when they were struggling. Like, he would really just do this incredible effort to help his students. And it's really funny. So, as I said, I'm the youngest of six. And no matter where any of us are in the United States, right? Like, we always run into people who recognize our last name, or like we look alike. So it'll be
Mhm.
like, was your dad a teacher? It's like,
Yeah.
yes. Oh my gosh, he was my favorite teacher. It was so it's just like, when I go to get my license renewed, when my you go to the doctors, like, it's just been, he created, but at home he was just dad, but he
Yeah.
was really like this superhero teacher, which, I went to a different school, so he was never my teacher. But and then after he retired, it was just very interesting. These other sides of his personality came out. Like, he started to, when we were growing up, my mom did a lot of the cooking, and he would do some things, like, just he would do, barbecue, or like the turkey and holidays and stuff, but he wasn't ever a big baker. And then all of a sudden he's just like Mr. Baker, and it was just so it was so wonderful. His pies became famous in the family and in our community. And then, so it's just like this really, really humble but really giving spirit.
Mm. Yeah.
um and he would it was it's funny because, as we were just saying, um time time works differently with grief.
Yeah.
And with everything in the world, with COVID and just life, I hadn't really celebrated my birthday with a group or an event or anything. And I did a lot of things. I live near where my parents live, in the same town. So we hadn't done any celebrations at my family's house since he really passed away. And my birthday was recent, and so I said to my mom, let's do a birthday party. And my dad was always the one who would say, yeah.
Yeah.
He'd be like, sure. We would, and it was lovely. I saw people I hadn't seen in a long time, but it took me probably 24 hours to feel the grief that he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So that's where it just comes up of just, you just miss them.
Mm.
And it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. And that's the thing with grief too, isn't it? It's like it's dual feelings. Like you've had this amazing birthday party, seeing everybody, but also the sadness and, the loss of your dad not being
Right.
there.
Right.
Mm. Yeah. But how amazing to have a birthday party. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah, it was funny. He always just enjoyed that, like the entertaining, and they were always like, both my parents are just, when I was in graduate school, I lived there because the school is very close. And I worked as a graduate assistant, so we always had like department parties there. And
Yeah.
so my parents, it was just, but it was just always fun, and a celebration. And it was always lovely, and just, it was so nice. And I think it was the first time my mom has entertained a large group of people,
Yeah.
and she was very nervous about it.
I bet.
And so I just, had to reassure her. And we were, it was it was going to be a good group of people, and it was really wonderful to see that she had fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when everyone had left, there was a few of us that were there, but she was just eating, we had less food. And so we were just like talking about my dad, and it was fun. Like, the fun memories too, which had been, sometimes it's interesting. I don't know if you hear this or if other people do, but sometimes there's almost this hesitation to talk about the person, which I was really surprised by with grief.
Mm.
As if I bring him up, is that going to open pain for people?
Isn't that interesting? Because Patrick, I hear that all the time. And it's like their friends don't want to actually mention their loved one's name because they might get upset.
Yes.
Like the
Yes.
green bar is actually protecting the other person as well, protecting your friends so
Yes.
they don't get upset. So it sort of
Right.
ends up that nobody talks about them.
Right. And I had one of my brothers who uh, were very different. It's a large family. I know you know
Yes,
what I'm saying. Like
I have them.
there's love, but we're all different. We all
Yes.
process things different. So I mean, I would talk to my mom about it, and I use humor a lot, and like, so just to try to bring some joy, because they had been married when he passed. I think it was 53 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
About maybe longer than that because the a few years before COVID, they had their 50th celebration and they renewed their vows and everything, and we were all together. So probably closer to 54 years. So she's completely lost her
Hmm.
person. And one of my brothers said to her at one point during this time of, well, I don't want to bring him up because I don't want to hurt you. And she was able to say, it actually is helpful if you do bring him up because it keeps him alive.
Yes.
Um, so I think that was an important discussion. I know for myself, it's funny. It doesn't matter what profession you're in. People always say that. I'm sure you hear, oh, you're a therapist. You should know
Yes,
all the skills. It's like that
exactly.
goes out the window
Yeah.
with this. It's like, it's, you've, nothing matters. Like, I mean, in the sense of like no skill matters because it's so raw. And as you mentioned at the beginning, what or we talked before we started a little bit of some things that have helped is I use my own personal social media just to, when I'm feeling it, I just put it out there,
Hmm.
which I've always been hesitant of showing personal things on social media because it's social media, right?
Yeah.
But being able to say, like the other day, I just did this after the birthday of, um, I'm just really missing my dad this week. It's just really hard. And, all of these people just supported and people started sharing their stories. I lost my dad 18 years ago and it's still hard. So
Hmm.
it challenges this belief. And I don't know if it's where it comes from, but that we're not supposed to talk about it or there's an expiration date on this.
Yes, that's
So
right.
that's been an interesting learning curve. I don't
Yeah.
know if I'm talking too much. So
No,
if
you're not.
it's
No. This is why I have you, Patrick.
okay.
I love
I'm like, she
conversation.
might have a question, so just
No, 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 because it's so beautiful to hear your experience of it, because it is, about people having this expiration date, but the expiration date seems to be after the funeral. Like, I don't
right,
know about in the US, but it is here. It's like, okay, now you get back to work. Now you just act normal. Now you just, we don't mention your person. So
right.
it's like, just get on with life.
Hmm.
And a lot
Well,
of
it, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Is that
a lot of my clients who come to me say, like, my friends have told me, like, it's been 3 months now, I should be good.
yes? And it's funny, and I'm going to be very honest here. Is I've started to get therapeutically angry for my clients
Mm,
when they are told that, and I tell them because I've lived it, and I say, you are allowed to be whatever you are feeling for as long as you're feeling, because as long as there is love, there will be grief because this person is gone.
yeah,
And
exactly.
if anyone tells you anything different, have them give me a call and I'll clarify it
Yes,
for them. A little humor,
exactly.
but
Yeah.
you see that relief of almost they have to compartmentalize it, their grief, like it's a time period. And I think getting to know you and seeing the work that you do, you and I had some conversations when it happened, which were
Yeah.
really helpful. And it just, and also, I think in my work as a trauma specialist, really seeing how grief is bigger than just death.
Yes.
It's missed opportunities. It's what happened. It's what didn't happen. And people are constantly looking for permission as if they have to earn the right to grieve.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And I know many people say to me that, I didn't know that I'm normal. I just wanted to know my grief was normal.
Hmm.
And I say, I hate that word normal. I want it to be natural. Like, just
Hmm.
grieve the way
Hmm.
you're feeling. It doesn't matter about the other people. Like, you're grieving. And as you say, grief is love. And as
Hmm.
long as love lasts, that's how long you grieve.
Right.
So,
Right.
and yeah, and as David Kessler says, um, death is a long time. It's
Hmm.
like forever. So
Yes.
grieve that.
Yes.
Mm,
And going back to what you were saying, so I was raised Catholic, and so there
same.
was sort of, there's you would do the wake and then the funeral, and then depending on the time of the year, the burial.
Yeah.
And at this time when he passed, it was when Omicron had really just exploded, the COVID variant. So
Mm,
everything was just, hyper on alert, and
yeah.
my family was all over the country, so it wasn't really plausible at that time, right?
Mm,
So he died 3 weeks before Christmas,
mm.
and then we weren't able to get together for a service until June of,
Wow.
that. So that's almost, 5 months.
Mm,
That made it awful. That
mm,
made it awful
mm,
because you're just holding your breath for the whole time. And I was very thankful to my mom because I thought I didn't want to wake because it just seemed too excruciating to me of having to stand in a room. It
mm,
was just so what we ended up doing was we didn't do a wake. We did the funeral, and then we went back to our family's home, and we got food catered,
mm-hmm.
and it was the loveliest celebration for him that it could have been, with really, and people stopped by, they left, we were able to be at home together. No one had to clean, no one had to cook, but we had a celebration.
Yes.
And after that, it felt like I could breathe again a little bit. Like
Yeah.
there was that closure we had been missing.
Yeah. 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 Do you know it's funny? We have it in the reverse. Like we have the funeral and then the wake.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Which it's weird to hear that it's backwards.
Yeah.
So
And when you do the wake, is it where the family is in a line and people come in, or is it okay? So
yeah,
it's
yeah. So
okay.
it's a real traditional
Reception.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's right. And then we usually have a large TV set where we show videos of our person and photographs and things like that. So yeah, and then we talk about them.
Oh,
And
I love that.
yeah, yeah. And just because you don't know them, do you? Like
Right. No,
not from the other person's point of view.
no.
It's like,
Right.
who are you talking about? Like he wasn't like that. So
Right. Right.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it was funny because many, many years ago, I was at my parents' house and I was just going through albums, and I had found my mom had put together I don't know if this is common, like a bride to be album, like
Oh,
preparing for the wedding and everything, and
yeah.
what the dress, and
Mhm.
and I'll never forget this because she had an entry is, I'm so excited to marry him. I just love him so much. And it was like, who are you people? Like, like used to yell at us for putting pick up your clothes, do your,
Yeah,
it's like, oh my gosh, they were in love, silly. They had this
yeah.
beautiful, and then just different things. As a kid, you don't really pay attention to things, but I was visiting my mom one day and I saw their wedding picture, and it's like, it was such a beautiful picture. It was just
Wow.
like a stunning couple, and it was just so cool to see them that way. And my mom can get stuck in the grief. She, very, very different. And so
Mm,
it's just like supporting and bringing in the humor and reminding her, I
yeah,
think helps a lot too.
yeah, yeah. So is she living alone now?
Hmm.
Yeah. And see that because we've been together a long time too, like 1975 we met. And my husband and I, I
Hmm.
just thought I'd clarify that. But and then we married in 79. But my husband had a heart attack a couple of years ago. He's still alive. But, not having him there and thinking one day, like, and the day might be close,
Right,
living that
right,
week without him, it was like, how am I going to do this? It's
right,
really difficult when you've had, your person for that long. And I'm sure it's the same with that short as well, if you've had them a week and whatever. But I mean,
right, right.
it's, yeah,
That loss, it
yeah,
just leaves you, and it was difficult when it happened, on top of everything, the grief, but and then with COVID, and it was just it was you couldn't provide the same comfort that
yes,
you could. You just had to be careful, and people were getting sick all over the place, and you just wanted to do the best. So you were just being very creative. So I'd get a lot of food delivered, and I would,
yes.
just different things of just like checking in, and um, it was. As I was getting ready for our conversation today, I was just thinking of my experience with grief, and one of the components that stood out to me that really surprised me was the unexpected
Mm,
grief anger I've experienced.
mm,
And and of I remember I'm a pretty patient person. I can go with the flow. I remember so I'm the only one locally who was here at the time, and my sister had called me, and it was really interesting because as siblings my sister never calls me.
mm.
And
Yeah.
I was in the middle of something, and she called, and I was like, okay, that's not normal, but I couldn't answer in the moment. And then she called again, and I thought, someone's dead.
Oh,
Someone had died. And then she had left a message, and she was hysterically crying, and all of this. And so I called her back, and it was just, then I sort of took on the role of like, okay, so I called my mom, and she was out of it. She very disoriented.
mm,
Very disoriented. The police were there. It was just, it's such a different thing where there's so many technical aspects that have to go into it. So this person's passed away, and you have to wait for the coroner to come, and there's just like it was just, and then you're calling all of the family. So there's this, you're sort of stunned, right? Maybe a
mm.
little dissociated, a little dissociating, and you're calling all the siblings, and they all have questions. And um and I had called, my husband was traveling at the time, so I called him, and he was like, "All right, I'll come on my way home." And then all of a sudden, I remember I was just driving around. Like, my mom had been situated. They took the body, and there's a little area. It's called, near a football field or a soccer field, and I just sat there. And all of these people who I have no idea how they got my phone number were calling me, friends and family, of just like, they wanted to know what happened. Like, it was just, so that was where I had to tell the story over and over and over and over,
Wow.
which I wasn't anticipating.
No. And
And
oh my gosh, that hurts so
yeah,
much, Patrick. Wow.
yeah. So you're just stunned, right? And I'm just sitting in the car, like, sinking in, and like, and they were loving, and it was supportive, but it was like, my heart is broken, and
Mm,
you want details.
mm, yeah.
And then my irritation of just normal things was being in the store. There was a couple times where this wasn't so much the anger, but it was the pain, where I remember I was in the grocery store a while, maybe a couple weeks after it happened, and there was somebody my dad's exact frame, wearing the same exact kind of jacket, and I almost died.
Mm. Yeah.
And I was on, like, pushing the cart, and I just, like, went into a luckily no one was in the other aisle, and I just sort of, like, pulled it together.
Mm.
But it was those moments were really difficult. The um the irritation when people it's hard when people try to be kind, but they say the wrong things.
Mm.
So you have to, like, keep it in check a little bit of Patrick. They're trying to be supportive. They're trying to be loving, but I don't have the tolerance. It was spent, and people would text, and I just couldn't respond anymore.
Yeah.
And I and you can call me out on this, because it was what you're not supposed to do. I kept myself busy with work,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Most people do that.
it was all the first day I remember, between sessions, I just lay down.
Mm.
But if I didn't work, I think I would have just broke. And I couldn't break at that time,
Mm.
because my mom needed me, my siblings that weren't here. My sister was local at that time, so we were just sort of trying to manage everything. Um, it just changed everything.
Mm.
And even this year, just for personal reasons of trying to be healthy, and years of telehealth and whatnot, I said, all right, I have to move a little bit more this year. And now it's, so I started to jog, and I wanted to be healthier. And um, there was this one day where I was running on this path, and I was listening to music, and I could feel something was bubbling up. And usually when something's bubbling up, it's like a grief moment, is what I find.
Mm.
And I'm running, it's a sunny day, sunglasses, and I burst into tears, because there is this part of me of saying, "Oh my God, you left me." Like, he just, like, this little kid
Yeah.
was like, "You just abandoned me here in this really scary world. You just left us." And I felt bad, because I didn't, like,
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, it was this, I feel like a fool because I'm running and trying not to cry.
yeah.
Like, but like, I just, it was like, well, I guess God chose this moment. It was like, all right, Patrick, it's time. But to be able to say, it's like, oh my gosh, that abandonment had been buried for 3.5 years
Yeah.
of just, okay, okay. And then you just breathe through it,
Yeah.
and you let it out, and you just, I remember when I was in graduate school, a teacher gave me the best advice: take a deep breath and aim for grace.
Mm.
So I just tried to breathe through it,
Yeah.
because I think that's all we can do.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And it's totally valid. Like what you were feeling was totally valid, because he did leave you. He left you in this horrible world, like filled with COVID and people dying and, no contact at all with other
Right,
people. It's really difficult if you don't have someone else in the house. So,
right,
yeah. So, such, and it's a visceral feeling too, because it's your dad.
right,
So
right,
it's like, how could you do this? Like, you're my protector. You're meant to
right,
stay here. Yeah.
right, right. And it was just, you just have certain thing, like, I could always make him laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
He would just call, and I would just vent or something and be totally silly, and I could just, making him laugh just made me feel better. And it was just, certain things. And one of the moments that was difficult. I don't know if anyone has anyone ever done this, but I had a voicemail from him
Mm-hmm.
and on my cell phone, and I couldn't listen to it, but I just knew it was there. And then all of a sudden, I accidentally deleted it.
Mm-hmm.
I it was like losing him all over again, and I called the phone company. I just complete panic. And because of my phone plan, which I didn't even know there were options, it wasn't recorded. So I'm just like, that's when I almost just like lost
Yep.
all of my mind of like, this is 2020, whatever. How can this not be? That's where I lost it a little. Like,
Yep.
that's when I just freaked out a little bit of just, this is too much. So I just erased him. And it took me days and days, and I reached out to some friends who had done the same thing.
Yep.
So I felt as if I insulted him by doing that. It was just really, the thoughts that come in, and he was so laid back that he wouldn't. It was just my own grief, my own brain of,
Yep.
but I don't have his voice on
Yeah.
a device, so it was those moments catch you by surprise, or um, Father's Day can
Yeah.
sometimes be difficult. So when it's interesting because June, so we passed in December, and June can be a little tricky because here in the States Father's Day, let's say, I think is like the third Sunday.
Mm.
But the same week is my dad's birthday and my parents' anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So every June, it's just sort of like, oh, we're just gonna,
Yeah.
I still have it on my calendar because I don't want to forget, just, the first year, I think we all did something in our own way. My dad um, really loved nachos.
Mm-hmm.
And pizza, I think, would be the second one. So the first year, we were all in different places, but we all sort of just texted each other like, "Hey, I'm having pizza, or I'm having," and I think I ordered that day as a surprise. My mom doesn't do a lot with, technology, so I ordered nachos and had them delivered or something like just those moments of joy.
Yeah.
And then the other piece too that I was thinking about what were sort of like how the signs come, if people believe in sign,
Mm-hmm.
there's such a spiritual piece there, and I think for me that's what's helped me go through it, of believing he's in what I call with God and with heaven, and at peace, and eating his nachos, having his favorite, maybe a beer, and watching football, or without any interruptions, or his favorite TV shows. Like, it gives us peace. But so I think I don't know if I have this correctly. If the saying is, if you see a cardinal, that someone from heaven is visiting you.
Yeah.
But this was really interesting. My dad's favorite color, as is mine, it's blue. And in my area, I had never seen a lot of blue jays. And then all of a sudden, in my neighborhood, around my house, outside my kitchen window, there are blue jays all of the time. And I just knew, I just felt it. And it just always felt like a reassurance of, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So I shared that with my sister and my mom, and then they started to see the blue jays a little. It was just really, really wild. There was a recent event that when we were growing up, there was this Mexican restaurant that we went to all the time. We all just loved it, and it's since closed, probably about 20 years ago. Had a very distinct smell.
Mhm.
Like how some restaurants do. You just it's
Yeah.
dinner. And I told my mom this the other day on my birthday. I said I walked into my entryway, and it smelled exactly like the restaurant.
Wow.
And no one was, no one was home, no one was cooking. It was in the middle of the day, and it was just in the entryway. When I went up the stairs, it just melted away, and I just said, I think that was just reassurance that that I don't I don't know why. I think I just needed the reassurance.
Mm, yeah.
I guess that's the word that's coming up of just like
Yeah.
it's okay. You're not alone. There's just it was just a really powerful moment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those have in grief that has taught me a lot to appreciate the beauty in those moments.
Yes. Yeah. So, Patrick, there's a lot of beautiful memories there. And um, so, what I want to ask you is what would have been the best things for people to do after your dad died and you're sitting in that football field and they're ringing you wanting to know? Have you had thoughts about that?
Yes, I think listening to yourself and knowing what your tolerance and knowing, I guess, let me clarify that. If you can't answer or respond, it's okay.
Yeah.
They they'll be okay.
Yes.
You have to be the the person in that moment, the child, you or the spouse or whoever it is. You deserve to have that moment
Yeah.
in that time. There will be plenty of time to answer and respond and to figure out all of the details
Yeah. 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 For sure. Yeah. So
and to
what?
breathe and to breathe.
Yes.
Remember to breathe.
Yeah, that's right. Number one. And I think
Yes,
as grievers, you actually have to be told that a lot because your breathing changes to extremely shallow or you hold your breath a lot.
yes.
So,
I went into a store once, and I guess another piece would be listen to what you can and cannot do. I went into a store, and I was just walking around, and my dad, as I said, was a teacher, and there
mm,
was a display for dads and something about teaching, and I had to walk out of the store.
yeah.
And there was a part of me that felt a little that I was crazy, but I couldn't. It was too painful.
Mm,
It was too soon. So I think listening to that and not feeling judged is really important to
yes.
those reactions.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, oh gosh, I've forgotten my question. I always do this towards the end. It's like I need, like, these are all wonderful and I can talk to you for hours, but it's like we sort of have to wrap it up at some
I,
stage.
I know.
So,
well,
mhm,
well, the other thing going back to your question that might be helpful is making sure you have good supports. You
yes,
have to you have to have people who are listening who just hold the space who don't try to fix it for you.
yeah,
What I found was when people gave me permission to be angry, when they gave me permission to be illogical, when they gave me permission to be sad, when they gave me permission to not be organized and to not be my full self, I felt as if they were just holding me together.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's so important because people don't realize that grief impacts you body, mind, and spirit. And
Yes.
it's like the whole thing. And there's parts of you that are, you don't focus. Your brain actually changes and your body makeup actually changes when you're grieving. So,
Mm-hmm.
people, like you say, need to be there just not to fix, just to be, really,
Mm-hmm.
and to listen. So I
Yes.
think that's a really important thing. I want people to educate, friends who haven't been through grief and say that, just sit
Yes.
with me, just
Yes.
preempt, just sit with me. Don't fix me. Don't make me laugh. Don't do anything. Just hear my story.
Yes.
Mm,
And find people who can tolerate crying.
yes.
I needed
Yes,
that because I have some friends who loving people, but they don't tolerate crying. Being a man and crying is hard, I
yes,
think, for many of us, and just it comes out.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It's just like the pain just erupts because you still have to. I think that was the other piece, that's you still have to function in the world.
yeah,
You still have to, even if you take time off from work, you still have to pay the bills, you still have to walk the dog, you still have to get groceries, you still have to do the things
yeah,
and be humane when you're so broken.
yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah,
So having that gentleness, it just, it's messy and it's okay.
yeah.
That's the natural part of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes. And we all have to understand that that is what every one of us will be going through at some stage in our lives.
Right. And it
So,
was it was really interesting, Kate, because I it made me a it's made me a better person and a better therapist and a better coach,
yeah,
because it's just taught me this gentleness of, even when relationships aren't perfect, they still help make us who we are.
mm,
And we can grow from that, and they don't have to define us.
yeah,
And working with trauma, it's all about redefining the trauma.
yeah,
And I think grief and trauma, go so close together, hand in hand.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. Well, Patrick, I think that's a great ending to our conversation. Thank you so much for taking the
Sure.
time.
Thank you for having me, Kate. I love it.
Yeah, I love chatting to you.
Yes.
It's so wonderful. All right, thanks, Patrick.
Sure.